While defund the police has become a rallying cry for Black Lives Matter activists and some of the thousands of protesters across the country, Democrats in Congress are considering their own set of proposals. Amna Nawaz has more on that.
That's right, Judy. And just today, the New Jersey State Attorney General released video of the fatal shooting of an unarmed black man, Maurice Gordon, by a white state trooper last month. It happened just 2 days before the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis. In Congress, more than 200 House and Senate Democrats have now signed on to the Justice in Policing Act. As we laid out earlier in the program, it would, among other things, ban chokeholds, end no-knock warrants in drug cases, mandate police training on racial bias, and collect data at the federal level on the use of force. One of the bill's sponsors is Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey, and he joins me now. Senator Booker, welcome back to the NewsHour. Let's talk about this legislation now, because there are some elements in here that have been on the table before. Efforts to stop militarization of police, to end racial profiling. Neither of those bills came to a vote under pressure from police unions and others. So what's different about the proposals now, other than the moment in which they're being brought forward?
Well, I think, first of all, the moment is the message that we have today. There's been no great bills of social change in this country, from workers' rights to civil rights, LGBTQ rights. It hasn't had large-scale efforts, mass mobilizations of nonviolent protesters. There's an old saying in Washington, change doesn't come from Washington, it comes to Washington. And so when you have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Americans engaging in forms of nonviolent protests in all 50 states, multiracial, multi-generational, multi-religious coalitions, this bill that would never have gotten this many co-sponsors just a month ago now has 2/3 or more of the Democrats in the Senate and has 100 plus, closing in, I think, of 200 House members. So this bill has a lot more momentum to it, and you're right. And that's almost the ridiculous reality, is that many of these common sense ideas in this bill have been around for decades of people demanding for those change to happen. Well, now the demands are growing louder and all around this country, and some of these practices that should have been banned decades ago, I believe we now have a chance of getting it done.
You mentioned the co-sponsors. It's worth pointing out you don't have a single Republican co-sponsor out of those many that you listed right there. Why not? You pride yourself on reaching across the aisle, working with your Republican colleagues. What are they telling you is their hesitation in signing on to this?
Well, I'm not going to put any spotlight on anybody right now that I'm in good faith negotiations with, but I'm talking to Republican colleagues across the aisle. It's a long process. It took me years to get many of my Republican colleagues who were earlier on in my Senate career were talking against criminal justice reform, but ultimately we partnered on a bill that liberated thousands of people from prison, something people told me was impossible to get done. And so, again, this is what's right, and this bill is on the right side of history. And I know that this is the beginning. This is the less than 24 hours since we've presented this bill, but now we go to work. And the great thing, again, is that the community at large is demanding these changes beyond partisanship. You see people just saying this is the right, that we don't have no-knock warrants where plainclothes officers barge into people's houses, guns drawn. That's a recipe for a disaster like we saw with Breonna Taylor. We've already seen a few dozen police departments ban the kind of chokeholds that killed Erica Garner. These are very common sense things, that a police officer who does egregious wrong shouldn't have immunity in federal courts, virtual immunity. So these are things that the average American would say are common sense to enable us to hold people accountable, and will stop things like Tamir Rice being shot and killed by a police officer who was on the verge of being fired from another police department and just ducked out of that one and ducked into another one because we have no national databases of misconduct. These are common sense reforms that will protect people's lives, and it's the right side of history, and we're going to keep fighting until we get them done.
Senator Booker, I want to ask you about the other conversation around the police right now, and that is this defund the police movement and conversation. You have said that you won't use the phrase, but that you understand the substance. So what does that mean? Do you believe that police departments today constitute too much of a line item budget, too big a line item budget in many city and local governments?
Well, first of all, I'm watching Donald Trump try to weaponize this slogan like he did try to weaponize Black Lives Matter or the Green New Deal. That's not a conversation that we need right now. What we need is to talk to the real issues going on in our nation, that we are the land of the free, 5% of the globe's population, but 1 out of every 4 incarcerated people on the planet Earth are here in America. 1 out of every 3 incarcerated women are here in the United States of America. If you go into our prisons and see who we treat with police and prisons and jails, it's the most vulnerable in our society who need help. We overwhelmingly incarcerate people with mental illness. That's not a policing problem, that's a healthcare problem. We overwhelmingly incarcerate those who are addicted to drugs over and over again, and costing us millions of dollars before they get treatment. That's not a police problem, that's a societal problem and a medical care problem. We now criminalize poverty in this country and have for years. Ask anybody who has warrants out for their arrest because they couldn't afford the hundreds of dollars worth of traffic violation tickets that they have. So clearly we are a society that is investing in things that cost taxpayers much more money, that are an affront to human dignity, that don't elevate human potential and don't reflect our common values. So I'm not going to get in a false political argument when what I want to get into is how do we create a more beloved community in our nation, when we care for those people who are hurt and in pain and struggling and help them to avoid the need for police in the first place. If we were making investments...
So Senator Booker, I'm sorry to cut you off. I know that your time is limited. I hear you saying that you think those funds should be reallocated to meet some of those problems on the front end, but I want to ask you about this. This is an issue for mayors. This is an issue that you have had to make before in Newark. Back in 2010, when you were facing a budget crunch, you made the decision to cut about 150 police officers out of that budget crunch. And back then you said, when I first came in, we were starving other city departments to push more resources into the police department. Other mayors today could make the same argument. Was that a mistake back then?
No, I think it's because you're dealing with this as if it's a zero-sum game. The reality is what we started doing in the end of my term as mayor is experimenting with bringing in the John Jay College School of Criminology to see if we could attack some of the problems, drug crimes, drug violence, not with police intervention, but with community intervention, and we saw tremendous success on that. This is not a zero-sum game, pulling the dollar from one place, putting it in the other. It's about deconflicting our society. It's about stopping this over-reliance on police, prisons, and jails, and finding solutions, evidence-based solutions that work. And if we keep constructing it in a way where it's a zero-sum game, we're going to start lining up people on both sides. If we talk in a larger way, that there's a way to keep our society much safer with a less use of taxpayer dollars, and in fact, a better investment. And I can give you case after case as a guy who studied cities for the greater part of my 20s and 30s. I can show you cities and communities that have made these decisions strategically and shown that they could save taxpayer dollars, stop crime more than any police can, and elevate human potential. And that's what we should be having a constructive conversation about.
Senator Booker, before I let you go, Vice President Biden has not yet picked someone to run alongside him. Given race relations are a more urgent priority for America right now, does he need to pick a black woman?
I'm not going to tell the nominee from our party, who I trust with being the President of the United States, I'm not going to tell him who he has to pick. I trust that Joe Biden will pick someone who's prepared to be President of the United States, pick someone who can help to heal our country and bring us together, and someone who's qualified for that job. I know he has a lot on his mind and a lot to weigh. This is the most important election of our lifetime. And I trust that he will make not just the right decision in this case, but as President of the United States, he'll make many of the right decisions to help our country heal, come together, and envision and establish a more beloved nation.
That's Senator Cory Booker, Democrat from the state of New Jersey, joining us tonight. Thank you very much, Senator.
Thank you.